Hi.
Hola.
Hola.
Hey, how's it going?
I noticed you changed screen names on me. I'm not going to be able to find you now.
That was the goal.
Thanks. Okay, once. Give me a second. I got to mute my other side. I'm hearing myself in triple. I still am. It's muted and I still am. Hold on. What's going on? Oh. Okay, I think that's it. I fixed it. Right, can you guys hear me? Oh crap, did I lose everybody? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, crap. Okay, cool. All right, so once Ashley sends us, or we already are live. Never mind. We're live to everyone, so it's not just inside our Slack channel, just for the heads up. Did we advertise in general or anything today, by the way?
I think she didn't really advertise. I don't know.
Okay. I don't think she has a mic available to her right now. So before she cuts the live feed at the end, make sure you give them somewhere to find you at, whether it's your Slack email or whatever you want to be.
Okay.
So I started a little bit early just to give us head time.
That sounds good. Yeah. I don't know when you guys want me to start. I know that there's only 2 people now.
It's just her, Ashley and I right now. Let me go check something real quick. Actually, I don't have the juice. I need Ashley's juice to do the channel, like, hey, we're here thing. Not the thing that goes over notifications, just the general. Yeah, that's it.
Oh. So you sent out a notification? Okay.
I think that I thought David Molina and Conrad were both gonna some point if they had time.
They might drop in later and they'll start talking and I'll lose my train of thought and we'll start all over.
Yeah, it happens. Sorry.
No, that's all good.
Will you have video with yours tonight or just voice?
I'll probably share my background. I don't have much to show because there's a lot that I could show, but there's not a lot that I'm allowed to show.
Okay. Can you do like a side-by-side of you talking, or will it just be?
Yeah, I'll do like a video with some screen, some desktop or something. Because I did find something that's pretty related and it's public information and it's a pretty decent presentation. So I'll go over it and I'll do some more like other things that aren't in the sheet and it's like just a presentation. But
okay. Do you want us to be muted or whoever comes on?
No, you guys can talk if you have questions or whatnot.
Okay.
I don't want to like bore you to death with some of this stuff because it can be a little dry, but some of it can be kind of interesting.
Well, we'll make it fun. I bet Ashley doesn't have her mic on. We could really joke around with you and make it fun for playback later.
Yep, she will definitely make it.
There you are. See, that's much better. That's something to watch other than just a blank screen. And I'll warn you, don't open your YouTube feed to watch yourself live. It's really difficult to pay attention to because it's got such a delay on it.
Yeah, that could be. It's kind of funny, the whole delay.
Yeah, because it's not long enough to really be able to differentiate, but it's long enough that it'll really screw when you're talking. It does for me anyway.
Yeah.
I just got home from baseball, so I'm eating a brownie and like stuffing my face here while you're talking. Oh, what's your pet? What pet do you have in the background back there?
Oh, that cage? So we have 3 ferrets.
Nice.
So my daughter wanted a ferret for her birthday last year, and so we got a ferret, and then she liked it a lot, so, and we liked it, so we got another one, and then we got another one. So they're pretty good. They're messy. They're really messy. The first one was litter chained well enough, and then the second one decided that it didn't want to be litter trained anymore, or at all.
No.
And so the first one kind of backslid, and yeah. So we made this. If I can show you, we made this big cage.
Oh wow.
So that we don't feel so bad about keeping it a tiny thing all the time. But yeah.
Just wait till your daughter's a teenager. They're really not house trained anymore at that point. Like animals are a piece of cake compared to teenagers.
Yeah. Oh, no. My daughter isn't house trained. She will like decide to just pee her pants because she doesn't want to play, or she doesn't want to stop playing. And so I have to be like, all right, Lennon.
She's focused.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's in 1st grade, so sometimes playing is more important than things like eating and going to the restroom.
Yeah.
So I'm like, Lennon, did you wet the pants? She goes, no. I said, all right, well, are you lying to me? And she goes, no, maybe.
My daughter's house trained in that way, but it's like the clothes and the food and the everything everywhere and the makeup. Oh, good Lord, the makeup.
Oh, okay. So apparently Ashley wants me to get started.
Okay. She's probably like, stop talking, Jennifer.
She should ping me if she wants to say anything so that I actually get a big notification instead of having to chat too much. Okay.
Yeah, I'm in full screen mode, so I can't see anything.
All right. So cool. Let me see if I can share a screen.
Oh, me. Great.
Does it look like anything?
Me?
Can you wait? Is that what you can see?
Yeah, I see me.
All right, let's do the other one.
Oh, I see you. Now your picture.
Now what do you see?
I see your presentation. We have success.
Right. Some weird bug where I select one monitor and it goes to the other one. So I want to talk about like airfares. And everybody wants to know the best way to get cheap fares, and I'm going to basically say there's not really one easy way, because they're pretty gosh darn complex. So this is a presentation I saw before I started working my company, and I thought it'd be a really interesting way to like Google the company I work for and Reddit. So just Travelport and Reddit. And there's this really long presentation that goes into it. And so this is by a company called ITA, and I think Google bought them, and they do something very similar to what we do. And it comes down to there's like 4 large companies that do this. And what it is, basically, you have all these planes, like companies like American Airlines, British Airways, Yatra Airs, and they all publish data out. And there's people like you and me, we go buy plane tickets and we don't talk directly to the airlines. We usually talk to like, Expedia and Orbitz. And between Expedia, Orbitz, and can you hear me? Sorry. Like between those, the airlines and then the people who sell it, called the search providers or the aggregators, are companies like the company I work for and ITA and Sabre, and basically they all do the stuff in the middle. Like they price the planes because they get published this raw data, and it's like flight data, and there's certain restrictions on those flight data. like they can only be certain, this price is only from, this type of plane, or from this time of year, or it's only from this location to this location. And it's the goal of the people in the middle, like Travelport and ITA and whatnot, to find all that and combine it all into something that's, usable. So like when you and I go to buy plane tickets, I really care about getting cheap stuff. So I want the cheapest possible because, I don't make a shitload of money. But if your boss is paying for your plane flight, what you'll usually do is you don't really care about the price. You don't want to wake up at 5 a.m., right? You want to sleep in and you want to get there on time, and you don't want layovers. And so those are just like two major things, like convenience versus price. And when you're talking about like plane tickets, it gets to be really complicated. So this is like all of the flights in commercial flights in North America. And it's an art drawn between two airports if there's at least one flight between them over the next year. So this is just like everything. It's pretty dense. It's just to show you that's like there's a lot of stuff in there. It gets more complicated because there's like a lot of airports, and basically it's if you want to go somewhere, you could find cheap flights that are from like you have 3 layovers. Nobody wants that, but you could maybe find like a super cheap flight. But the more layovers you have, the more complex the algorithm gets, because you're not just looking from point A to point B. If you have 2 connecting points, you could go point. So if you want to go from a maximum of 1 layover, you could have A to B, B to C, or A to C. So, and that's just 2 routes. When you get to 3 possible connecting points, you can it gets pretty complicated really fast. So here's one interesting example. So this shows that if you go from San Francisco to Boston, they calculated 2,000 total paths. And if you can see here, they start off in like San Francisco, and up here I don't know where the fuck that is, but it's YVR, or you can fly through Seattle. But if you see this, most of these places are like 1 connecting point. I don't see off the bat any with more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So some of these are like 6 connecting points. You don't want that. But the idea is basically you take all your list of flights and you figure out the routes and you figure out the fares, and then you see if they're validated fares. And in between that, there's a lot of things that are really different. So for instance, if you're a company like Expedia or Priceline, someplace you go to, and you want to buy it, they can have these things, they can have agreements with air carriers called private fares. And they basically say, I'm going to buy this many tickets from you, or I'm going to sell this many tickets to you for these people. So you're going to give me a discount. And these are fares that, are, they're private, so they're not public, so you don't know what they are. And it just, for this one route, for just one route A to B to C, there could be 2 completely different fares for that. But then it's even more because there's different ways of calculating tax. So if you go from like, let's see. So if you remember a couple years ago when they had this big controversy where you would go to buy your plane ticket and you would check out, and then your rate would go up like $30, $100, something like that. And they passed a law that said, hey, you can't do that anymore. Well, that was when the airline started putting on this surcharge. And what it was a way for them to make like a little tax to get a little bit of extra money. And we call that a YQYR surcharge. And like, it's basically like a fuel surcharge for them, to just, recuperate some of the money. But so yeah, here's a more complicated version. It's 10,000 quickest paths, and this is all on the same day. So this is all like one day. So they all arrive on the same day, but you can, so this is just like a one-way flight. So an outbound. And then if you have to deal with like the inbound, so say you have 10,000 pass outbound, and then you get the amount coming inbound. It's like 10,000 times 10,000, so 100 million total paths. And so you basically realize that you can't calculate everything. It's like, it's way more complicated than any type of shortest path or whatnot, because you can optimize by the amount of, like, for instance, in the EU, you have to take into account like carbon emissions. And so basically that's something like, that's a distance. You don't want to have too big of a distance. In other places, you have to take into account, are you flying over a certain country, or which taxes are you paid? Because, for instance, if you fly, there's this thing called a turnaround point. And ultimately, there's like many ways of calculating the same fare, and they can all be valid. And the idea is to find the cheapest way of doing it. So it'd be like you going into a grocery store and putting a bunch of things in there in your grocery cart, and whatever order you ring it up determines the price. And if you happen to ring up, do it in a certain order, you can try a couple ways. But if you put 10 items in there, you won't be able to get the cheapest price because you're just going to be there forever. So there's like ways around it. So say, for instance, you go to the grocery store and you realize that, hey, I could split this up into 10 different batches, and it's going to give me the same, I can get the cheapest overall price, but then I only have to try, 10 different batches. But then basically you take this higher complexity problem, a single problem, and you split it into a lower complexity problem with more possible, or with less overall iterations. So you save, computation power. Yeah. So, okay. Prices, fare for a one-way price between two cities. So this is going into a little more of the prices stuff. Like, for instance, this is like a one-way flight, San Francisco to Boston. And then you can also have, Boston, San Francisco. So this is like they're basically showing that you go out, so you're outbound, and then you're inbound. And there's a bunch of rules between matching this and this. You can't just match, you as a consumer can't go out there and fly San Francisco to Boston, Boston, San Francisco, and get the cheapest price for this one and the cheapest price for this one, and then add those together. Because a lot of times they do special fares like, hey, here's a super cheap San Francisco to Boston flight, but this won't combine with anything else except for really expensive Boston, San Francisco flights. So it's just one way that it make it more complicated, because ultimately it comes down to what the airlines publish their prices for, or they publish the prices. But here's one of the things I mentioned earlier. So if you have A, B, C, you can calculate the flight where it goes A to B, B to C, or up here, you can calculate so it goes A to C. And what you're then doing is you have one flight, right? Like, you as the person who buys it, you don't notice the difference between flying this, or this. All you care about is you got from here to here. It's the same everything. It's the same class. It's the same, you can have the same seat and all. But just because of how they book it and how they combine the results, this one's 500 plus 300, so 800, and this one's 1,000, so you've saved $200. So now when you get to 6 possible things, so A, B, C, C, D, E, you have even more. It's just how do you take that problem and you make it actually solvable in a smaller way. So then here's something. These are things called priceable units. I'm kind of glad that this is public information because I can actually use terms that I use at work. So for instance, priceable units. So one way trip, there's a round trip, so A to B, B to A. Open jaw is what you think about an open jaw is you go A to B. So say you want to go like to someplace else and then take a rental car to a different airport and then fly back home. That would be an open jaw. But then there's also open jaws where they don't have the same return point. And then there's circle trips, so A, B, C, A, and then other circle trips. And the idea is that if you want to find a cheap plane, there's cities like New York City and London, and basically they have more than one airport. And so you could fly into one airport there. You could stay there for a couple of days and then fly out of a different airport and it'd be open jaw. And these different types of priceable units aren't always combinable. Bless you. So the price is like depending on so fare components may be grouped into priceable units multiple ways. Okay, so here's a really interesting one. Now, so this is a circle trip. So here's the same SFO to Denver, Boston, DFW. And then it's basically saying, hey, we're going here, back. So it's one combined circle unit.
Can you zoom in a little bit? There we go.
So this is the same flight. Again, it's 2 different types of priceable units. One is a circle trip, where it's just the person who's buying plane tickets is doing the same thing. They're getting on San Francisco. They have a layover at Denver. They're stopping in Boston for whatever reason. They're flying back through Dallas, and they come back to San Francisco. Over here, it's the same route. But what they're doing is here they are they're splitting up to 2 different prices. And if they're getting on at Denver, they could sit there and say, well, DFW to SFW to Denver, so we're going to split this up into this price. And even though they are returning, they can sit there and say, well, guess what? We're going to treat this as 2 separate things that we're not returning. So it's a different fare class. But so this is a lot of times where you'll see like really weird fares that are possible. Like I don't recommend any place online to buy cheap fares. But if you, I know someone at, would recommend like there's this one website called Scott's Cheap Flights, and they send like daily emails of weird things that are off the wall, like here's a $600 flight to Maui that's one way, or things that are just someone data mines it and finds a really cheap flight. So, but one thing that's denoted here is when I mentioned the whole rules for combining flights and determining prices, these are actually called fare rules. And this is all determined by the air carriers, and they publish these rules, and they say this is a fare, and this has the rule of these different rules. So again, something else that you have to take into account when you determine the flights. Like for instance, one of the rules says that this fare is only valid for this equipment. So a fare is only valid for this type of plane. A fare is only valid in this time, or a fare is not valid for this plane. And one of the things that you see is that people, like customers, can get like a really, really fine-tuned detail where you can sit there and say, okay, well, I don't want this fare is not valid on this date. You know, from this fare is not valid in July if they try and purchase it in March. And if they try and purchase it in April, it's valid. If they try and purchase it in May, it's valid. So they come out and they make these really complicated rules, and you just have to learn them. Half of my job is finding out about a rule that has been around forever that I didn't know about before. So priceable units add to flexible pricing in 2 places. First, the choice of different partitions of fare components. This is sort of space second. So a fare might require that other fares in the same price will be published by the same airline and have similar basic codes. Oh yeah, that brings another one, same airlines. So I know you've been on a flight before that you were like, I'm flying American Airlines. And then you get on it and it says British Airways. So that's called code share plating. And like, for instance, that has a fee associated with it. So if they're in a certain alliance, there's different fees. There's different platings that cost more than that. And it just basically it adds a little surcharge to your ticket if it's like that. And it's a way for different airlines to have a bigger, range of places. So if you ever wonder why you're on a different airline than you thought you'd be on. What else? But code share plating, flights can be broken into fare components and price units in many ways. So here's this one example. And there's four different airports, 1, 2, 3, 4. So they do a round trip. There's 2 open jaws. So again, the 2 open jaws is where A, B, C. So one thing stops, and then it's C, D, E. Then there's 1 circle trip 3, where you have San Francisco. You don't actually stop at Denver, you Boston, and then DFW. So there's like 3 real stops: San Francisco, Denver, Boston, DFW. And then you have 4 one-way trips. So you could actually there's a price for this to there, and there to there, and there to there. So just different ways of doing it. And there's even one where you're on a plane and you stop at an airport between places, and it's only for refueling. So that's something even different. That's not on this, where you are actually going from San Francisco to Denver to Boston, and then your plane actually lands here. It's not on your ticket. You can't really get off the plane, but it's there. So now to get back to the whole fares, when I say that we get the fares from the airlines, there's this company called ATPCO, and this is kind of outside my expertise, but they basically, each company will subscribe to their fares, and a single company cannot, single company that does what the company I work for does, can't subscribe to all the airlines. It's just too expensive, and there's just so many airlines, and so you get their fees and you're able to sell through them, and they gives you all the data. So now, when I mentioned that it's really computationally intensive, a lot of things that people suggest is, well, why don't you just, why do you wait for the customer to ask for a price? Why don't you just calculate it beforehand? Why don't you just cache your results? And this goes back to one of those industry things where if you're buying if you're going to a concert or if you're going to a movie theater and you want to buy a ticket, they'll hold they'll reserve the ticket for you. And out of that seat that you're at, there's maybe like, 100 possible seats at that same cost. Well, in an airplane, there can be like 4 or 5 for that cost. And then the availability changes so rapidly because unlike the, the concert, most people don't want the cheapest seat at the concert. A lot of people want the cheapest seat on an airplane. And then even if you're in a higher class, like business class or first class, you want a cheap seat too. So we don't, it's impossible to calculate everything completely and then just hold the results and then wait, because price is based off of availability, and you have to contact the airport or the airline and say, hey, how many seats you have available. So it's called like polling the airline. And if you do that too often, it's like any other API. You can't contact them too much. If you do, they rate limit you. And if you're serving like, billion-dollar companies, that's really bad. So you can't cache your results. You run out of, your results don't work very well, because you'll sit there and say, hey, I got a really cheap flight. I have this 4 seats available. And even if you like if your cash expires and you try and sell a ticket, and someone's like, oh, I had this really good price and I went to book it and it went away, that's probably what you've seen, because you've gone to buy something and it got denied. To go back to the other thing, these companies I mentioned that sell these plane tickets, the ones that you actually talk to, usually they contact all 3 of us, like all 3 of the big people. Like, so whenever you go buy a plane ticket, the company I work for will be in one of your results. So here's OEM fare rules. So here's fare rules. So passengers. So you can restrict passengers. You can restrict the age and nationality, occupation, employer, and this is something that airlines can do. And then you can restrict the fare component, so the dates, times, location, airlines. When we went back to all those different types of priceable units, those ways you can combine them all, there's fares can be restricted so that some priceable units don't work, and some do. And then, so, yeah.
Hey,
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Before you skip down,
Go ahead.
Location. I run into this being a military spouse. Purchase location. So when they're coming home from overseas, for R&R, purchased inside the U.S. is a much different price than purchased outside the U.S.
Yep.
A lot cheaper to buy inside.
Well, there's also it's also weird too, because you can if you go to a website like Yatra Air. So this is like an Indian. It's kind of like an Indian Expedia. Okay, and so if I go here, even if I say block my location, they already know. So if I want to go from BIA to Delhi, search here. I don't know. Plays in a different time from city. I don't know if they'll actually have BI, but let's just do this. Let's pretend that I'm going to be going from Delhi to Mumbai, and I'm in the United States, and it's on this day. And then if I go incognito, there probably will be a different price. So this is in, so Delhi, Mumbai. I think I had. 8.3. I don't remember. So did I do 9.3 or did I do 8.3? I don't remember. Let's see it, 10 March. So Delhi. Okay. So see that price difference? And it just went down again. That's
yeah, I do it out of Germany. So
yeah,
I will put the flights all up.
Yeah. Now, so I'll be at work, and we can when we do this sort of stuff, we can emulate customers, and we'll say that, hey, we're gonna pretend to be this customer, just because that's how we test to make sure that they're actually experiencing error, and like you'll just see weird stuff, and it could be that Yatra Air knows that they have customer settings for someone who's from the United States versus someone who is incognito, and because it all comes down to like the customer can set a lot of different settings for it. They can set so many settings. They can sit there and say, I don't want to fly through this airport. I don't want to fly this carrier. I don't want to fly. I don't want any open jaws. I don't want to be able to sell one ways. I don't want to be able to sell this class. I don't want to fly. Like when I say fly through the city, I don't want to fly through this country. I don't want to fly through this airport. I don't want to fly. They can just specify anything. They can specify almost everything they want, and you have to modify your search results for that. So it does get into like a lot of levers you fine tune to turn to get the right results, because sometimes they'll say, hey, like what's a good example? Like sometimes they'll say that they know this one airport's under construction, or this one airport in Russia is experiencing a higher crime rate, so they don't want to. They've had customers who sit there and said, you know what, I got mugged, and so they want to stop selling tickets to this one airport in Russia or this one airport here, and to them that may be the cheapest fare for them, but then they're more worried about other things like I don't know, they realize that by getting rid of this one fare that could be cheaper, they're actually finding other cheap fares, because it could be that this one airport has a crap load of semi-cheap fares, and it just adds to complexity, and by getting rid of those, it doesn't have to calculate it. Oh Lord. So sample fare rules. Yeah. So here's a rule: Tuesday or Wednesday. And if you fly Tuesday or Wednesday, yeah, there's certain rules, or there's surcharges. It says add $20 if it's Boston FSFO, and then add 20 if it's this if it's FSFO to Boston. So they can add little like rules like that. So they restrict the priceable unit. And so then again, mention the combinability. All fares in PU must be on American Airlines or TW. Other restrictions, no, none of those. And back to back, complicated. Yeah.
Didn't the $20 rule on Tuesday come out after the big publicity stunt about buying airline tickets on Tuesday evenings? Oh,
I don't know. I don't remember what that rule is about. I know that we so there's this Russia passed a new tax for imports and all sorts of stuff, and it was like a way that they changed their taxes some way, and it caused like people were asking about it to make sure it was correct and whatnot, and so we started joking about calling the Putin tax, because it was just, it's Russia, let's change our tax. And it was like Sometimes you'll see things like taxes that are calculated like 2 different ways. Like what's the percentage of the maximum total versus what's this flat tax rate? And then either one of those is valid, and so you pick the cheaper one. So there's a lot of, for travel solutions, there's flights that has, well, I can send these slides out because there's a lot of stuff in there. So here's some real numbers apparently. So they're, welcome or goodbye. So they're confining it to this. And now that they're talking about like actually pricing. So all flights on American Airlines, maximum 1 day travel each way. So they're saying that we're going to fly San Francisco to, I think it's Orlando and Boston to Dallas and San Francisco. So there are no other routes to get from San Francisco to Boston, Boston, San Francisco. Like you're not flying through Utah or Denver. You're not flying through Atlanta, some of the other bigger hubs. You're only flying through one airline, so American Airlines. So you're not dealing with any like getting on one airplane at one place and a different company at another one. You're purchasing 14 days in advance, so it doesn't, you don't have to deal with those less than 14-day surcharges. The Saturday night stay, so you don't have to deal with like and it's a maximum 1 day travel. So if you're doing a Saturday night stay, you're not getting that Tuesday and Thursday cheap cost, right? Because you're going to be flying Friday. You're staying like Friday or Saturday, you're staying Saturday night, and you're flying back Sunday. And so just with those restrictions, it says that, hey, here's 25 million solutions. Because like, again, it's just a huge problem space. But I don't want to talk about this. Variable pricing. Just gonna go for a long time. Single fare. Yeah. Oh, this is. Oh, look here. Hey, algorithms. So NP single fare fixed route is NP hard, which is to say that it's hard to solve and it's like impossible to solve completely. Fixed flights, variable fares is NP hard. So here's the big thing for all you people who've taken like algorithms before. If you search for everything, you're dealing with exponential size, which means that as your problems, the size of your problem and the difficulty of your problem is growing exponentially, as opposed to, say, if you're searching for, if you're searching through a list of like 100 items and you want to find one value, at most you have to check 100 items. Because you're just going through. If you are sorting 100 items, like the naive way says it'll take 100 times 100 because you have to check it. There's ways that are faster. What this is saying that if you have 100, if your problem space of flight is scaling, say it's 100 items, whatever items this is in this case, could be options or this or that, it's going to be like e to the 100, which I can do that here. So that many. Way more than that. But so one-step consistency, multi-step. So there you go. Full search is unsolvable. You can't solve everything. It's impossible. Here's where it gets into like really complicated math where they use like different matrices to find cheap flights or use probability to say this one's usually cheaper, this one's a little cheaper. And yeah. So then they go over like simulations of things they did. This is more math. I don't understand this. But here's a really cool graph that shows like just graphically what's the difference. So these are all LAX to NCME, Monday to Tuesday, August 11th through 12th. Here's the different prices. And if you look at that, you fly LAX, you're in Orlando for a little bit, then you're in London. This one has you like starting LAX, and then you're in Dubai, and then your London, and then your NCE. So you see these middle points right here with all these different airlines. Just like a quick visual view of like why it can be so difficult, why it can be so complicated, because you have like so many different carriers and each has a different fee. Yeah, more complicated math. So some of the things are like little ways they used to make it better to deal with. And then seat availability. So this is one of the things I mentioned a little while ago. So they adjust the prices according to band seats. And so the booking codes are, FY, BHQ. These are things that are on your ticket and you will usually see, but you don't really pay attention to. So F1, so there's one flight F class and H4. But so as availability goes down, price goes up. And here's one of those things, like I said, if you're sending requests to the airline all the time asking for their availability, they'll rate limit you and they'll cut you off. And sometimes they cut off big companies like can't really say any names, but there's been big companies that have been cut off from the data pipelines, and then you have to deal with like why are you rate limiting so much, or why are you pulling so much. So, but yeah, if you see like days prior to departure, you can kind of see like coach is pretty low. So this is like this new thing. It's not really new, but it's basic economy, where you get nothing, where you have to like pay for the water and the peanuts they give you. And yeah, don't fly basic economy, even if it's super cheap. It's terrible. Then here's like the normal economy that you're used to, where you can actually put stuff in your bin and you can use the restrooms without having to take a catheter. And then, but if you see like the cheaper flights go out quicker, and so in addition to each flight seat being more expensive, the average cost goes up because there's less cheaper flights. So O&D availability, so this stands for origin and destination. So O&D, or there it says right there. So to each airline, each sees potential part of many products. So sometimes the airlines, and as the airlines want to push this data, they want to sell tickets, but this is like something that the airlines are doing, which competes against people like you and I. They don't want to have empty seats on planes, so they like limit their availability so that you can so that these harder ones, like if there's one air route that costs them a lot of money to operate, how do they make it so that all the connecting flights to that don't book out, and then nobody can actually fly this one route? So this is something outside of what I do. I talked to a person at Operation Code sent me to a conference last year, and I got to talk to someone who worked for Air France, and she was like, yeah, we use machine learning to forecast out 3 or 4 months out how empty the planes are going to be. And so then we can go ahead and cancel the planes if we know that we're going to lose money on them, like 3 or 4 months before that they know that they're going to lose money. Seat availability. So again, when they say that this is not an area with big published literature, I agree with this. There are times at work where the only way to get answers is to talk to the person who's worked there for 30 years or 40 years, and they know the answer. There's a lot of stuff that people have done that just said, hey, let's come up with a new way of calculating it, and it worked, and it was a great idea, but it's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's kind of long, but it's pretty interesting. The stuff that I deal with most of the time is like customer changes what type of results they want, so you have to figure out how to get them the results they want without messing up everybody else's, or So I work, and I specifically work in search optimization, so which is optimizing parameters that people want so they can get the results they want and not messing up the whole system. But it's pretty complicated. It's pretty interesting. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
So for us people that are not brainiacs or crazy smart, when's the best time for us to book?
When's the best time for you to look?
Or book a ticket, yeah. Is there a secret weapon or a day of the week?
If you book it too early out, yeah, it's a bad idea. Especially if planes are starting to cancel, you know, like, oh, too far out and it's underbooked and they cancel the flight, then you're going to pay a bunch more money. I think they recommend like 2 months out. Find out. And you have lots of availability. Deal with any of those additional surcharges, and the chart I showed you there shows that that super cheap coach or whatever that's completely almost empty, so that it was empty like 60 days ahead. There's a lot of websites that kind of take the pain out for you, so that you can go in there and say, hey, I want to fly around this date. When should I buy it? Is pretty decent flight stuff too. Their flight searches is more like informational than anything else. 10-minute warming. Actually, I don't really have questions. I can answer the questions.
Any like major must-dos if you were telling anybody, or no, like don't do's?
Economy. It's like a bad. I mean, if that's all you can afford, yeah, go ahead and do it. But you can usually end up spending more money than you save if you get there and you realize you have to check something. Because the surcharges bring it above the basic economy surcharges that get you to economy price, then you pay for economy price. I mean, I guess frequent flyer miles help out if you fly enough. I don't fly enough for that. I mean, we all have our like military IDs or whatnot, so use those so you can get the quick pass, right? Anybody who says that they have the cheapest prices, I have cheaper prices, or on average. Like that's like if you go online and you look at all these companies like Sabre, like, oh, and our flights, we were cheaper than the other competitors, and there's no way for them to sit there and say, hey, we were cheaper 100% of the time, because it's just impossible. Because it goes back to but
Do you have any other questions that somebody would ask after the fact?
anybody wants to ask me a question, I guess you can message me on Slack. My name right now is _common_name. Actually, soon, just Ashley has to deal with that. I don't know. But if you want to send me an email, it's wimo7083@colorado.edu.
I had a question. Is there a certain time or place, like our time of year and region? Does that matter? Have you seen that? January in the Caribbean or versus, Colorado in November?
I mean, they usually do, and then they'll publish special fares. hey, here's a special fare because, or we want to book this plane out. Really cheap fares you see. The cheap fares that I like see and I hear about, right, are either accidents because they published the wrong fare. They published something for like $1 and they shouldn't do that. Yeah,
Honor
so
that?
that happened. They buy it. Yeah, someone buys it, they honor it. We're at work. We're told that if we encounter something like that, we are not allowed to use it. We can't take advantage of it.
Sure.
These are the fares that you think are really amazing, fantastic, or are like they're going to offer some promotion or so like when I go back to mention this whole private fares thing where a company goes into agreement with, hey, I want to buy a bunch of your plane tickets. Will you sell me a special deal? And they say we're going to sell what it is, but say we're going to sell 10,000 tickets of yours. Special deal. And of doing that, there's usually huge penalties. I mean, there are huge penalties. I don't know how much the huge penalties are. I don't really deal with, contract agreements and stuff like that. But so that they get towards the end of it, and they're like, okay, we got 2 weeks left. We got to sell 5% of our tickets left, and so whatever they do to sell it, maybe they realize, well, if we don't sell this many tickets, and it's going to cost us $60 surcharge for each. We're gonna have to pay for these tickets anyways, and then we have to pay $60 surcharge. Might as well just cover that loss ourselves. So that's one thing you see. But
Okay, I got a final question for you.
yes,
How long have you been with Operation Code, and what's your favorite part about it?
how long? Too long. And
Don't say that.
favorite part would be the part where I get to click sign off. No, about a year. I think it's almost a year, or it's a little over a year. And my favorite part is that I don't know. There's a lot of little fun projects to work on. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done.
You just recently became like a much more active part in our.
Yeah. Sorry. Here's the chubby ferret.
Ferrets.
So she's nipping at my feet. Yeah, no, it's pretty fun. I contribute to a lot of fun things. All right, you're gonna cut the feed, Ashley?
Let's see, let me go check it right now. But